Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek, the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Volume 16, Chapter 8. I'm done, by the way. This is done. We done with 16, boys. That was a beefy boy. A very beefy boy. I have to say, after finishing Volume 16... not my favorite volume. There's a lot of juicy bits in here, and I think a lot of it was towards the earlier part of it, around the conversation with Orsted, but honestly, overall, very, very weak and very kind of setup type of volume, which we have to have setup. Eventually, if you're going to have something big, you got to have some setup, and so it's natural. But I think Chapter 9 emphasizes what I think is easily Refugian's weakest aspect. I love Mushoku Tensei. Through and through. I absolutely adore this series so far. It is easily going down as my favorite property ever. And yes, partly that's because I've actually been reading the novels, where there's a lot of series that I have not read yet, but it is going down as easily one of my favorite. But I will criticize where criticism is due, and I've heard some people echo this, so I don't feel like I'm alone. Refugian is not the best at slice of life, the mundane things of life, and I'm hoping this changes. He's not good with the perspective of his wives. Like, these girls, like, I was so excited going into Chapter 9, and I get to this point where all the girls are sitting around to talk, and I'm like, holy crap, this is good. I love these perspectives from them. I want to know more about them. And you know what it turns out to be? Talking about what they're basically confirming everything that we have seen Rudius do. Like, they're just talking about him. I want them to talk about each other and not just their bodies. I want them to talk about each other and what they're feeling, and no, it's about Rudius. And so when I'm reading through Chapter 9, and it is a long chapter, this thing is like legit, like a third of the entire volume is Chapter 9. It was unfortunately, a slog to get through, because it's just, again, I don't think Refugian's good at just mundane stuff. It's not interesting enough. It's not funny enough. It's not clever enough. It's not relatable enough, at least for me. And that's where it kind of struggled with me. So that all said, I did a lot of breakdown of Chapter 9. This honestly turned out to be, I think, like almost half of my document for Volume 16 was literally these last 3 chapters. And so I broke down Volume 9 quite a bit. A lot of the repetitive talking I kind of cut out. So keep that in mind. We're not gonna hit every single quote like I typically like to do. I like to make sure that at least the quotes for the characters are in it. I broke that stuff down. And I don't know if we're going to get through the rest of these chapters because of how long Chapter 9 is. So we're going to do Chapter 8 and Chapter 9 at least. I do not want to do just 8. 8's too short. Extra chapter is very short. I might just keep extra chapter for the next Mushoku Monday. This will be probably my first time I will force myself to put it off. Just put it off to the next volume. Because I don't want this to be extremely long, because again, this is like 35 pages in my document that they're legal sized pages. So that's a lot. That all said, though, about the only thing that I really kind of thought of last Mushoku Mondays, yes, I got yelled at by a lot of people that, yes, Zod, it rhymes with man god. I think that was just a loss in translation. I do admit that I completely misread it when it was talking about a certain party betrayed him. I was thinking like an actual like MMO party, like an actual like, let's get together and fight this thing, like a group of people essentially, but more like their party in a dispute. So yeah, I take my L with that one, but I don't take the L on the rhyming with Zod. I think that's just stupid. I'm sorry. That all said, though, yeah, it's probably the man god. I just wonder if it was like a lost in translation. I'm curious what the original light novel, because apparently that was all original to the light novel. I'm curious what the Japanese novel said it was, because obviously Hitogami or whatever, and I'm curious if it's like rhymes with, or it starts with H, like Hitogami, and it rhymes with origami or something like that. That would probably make more sense. But anyways, that all said, as per usual, greatly appreciate you guys for dropping by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well and you have a great rest of your Mushoku Monday after you're done with this Mushoku Monday. Greatly appreciate you guys' support monetarily, telling other people about us. Again, Gearless comes in once again, just dropping a bomb right at the end of the Mushoku Monday last week. I thank you so much. It means so much to me, Nicholas, Noah, all the new memberships, all the new Patreon supporters. It means so much to me. You guys are fantastic, and it keeps this going, keeps the lights on, and I love it just as much as you guys. And I think the support and just doing this with you guys is what makes it so special. So you guys are amazing. But With all that said, let's just dive into this because, like I said, it's going to be a long one. Chapter 8, The Armored Dragon King and the Second Princess. I have to admit, this is a little bit disappointing. I'm going to admit this is a little disappointing, but we'll get into it. After leaving the labyrinth, Ariel flagged down Serval and requested a meeting with Pedagoose. An hour later, she was summoned. They got changed, and she was ready. Rudius wore his robe given to him by Orsted, seeing it as pretty much a work uniform. He figured Pedagoose wouldn't mind. In the audience chamber sat Pedagoose and Ariel before him. Surrounding them were 12 spirits. Yet, she didn't cower. She had a bold smile on her face, unfazed by the gazes. She curtsied before Pedagoose as Sylphie and Luke took a knee. Rudius this time followed their lead. He's like, I'm not going to make the same mistake I did last time. I'm ever so grateful that you've taken the time to grant me your audience.
Enough with the ceremony. What do you want? Based on your outfits, I assume this isn't merely an invitation to tea.
Pedagoose seemed to be pretending that he was clueless. Surely, Serval clued him in. His reception was flippant and cold, but he agreed to the audience. Maybe this back and forth was little more than a formality. Lord Pedagoose, I have come to seek your aid in my bid to become king of Osra Kingdom.
Oh, then allow me to ask you once more.
Pedagoose put his elbow on the armrest, leaning his cheek against his fist and tilting his head.
What is the most important thing a king must possess?
The most important thing a king must possess is... Rudius hadn't heard the answer yet. Ariel said she knew, but there was no guarantee it was right. Yeah, it's like this one of the moments where you just assume that she's going to have the right answer. Which, yes, technically it wasn't. While Rudius wouldn't know if it was correct or not if she told him, discussing it beforehand would have been safer. No, he'd have to have faith in her. She had the confidence in her answer. It couldn't be too far off the mark. Determination. Determination to carry the wills of those that came before them. Her words echoed in an otherwise quiet chamber.
Oh.
Pedagoose exhaled his response, expression unreadable as always. That was the answer she arrived at, and Rudius could see why. Her path began with the death of Derek. 13 followed, pushing her to where she is now. Rudius knew who they were, and the future they hoped for, because Ariel told him. Through his words, Derek had communicated his will for her to carry out. Even after death, Ariel tried to live up to what he's seen in her. There were surely countless others who placed their hopes in her. That was the foundation in which she would become king. That's the disappointing thing, is like, there was a side of me that kind of thought that she would find something else. But I guess that's kind of poetic in its own way. Whereas we came here and she was doing this whole thing because some people died. And it's like that aspect of like, well, who cares? Like, we're not going to support you just because people died. And then going into the whole thing where she's trying to figure out the answer, I think what kind of comes from it is this idea of not so much doing it because they died, but doing it to carry their will. That's the difference. Don't do it because you feel bad and because it snowballed out of control and a bunch of people died and you're like, crap, I feel bad for them. No, doing it because you want to carry on what they desired, essentially. So it's kind of like, there's a side of me that's disappointed because it's not something else that she discovers, but it's more of an idea of clarifying it, like clearing up her mind and realizing what is important about that. So it kind of works in the end. Then there was Ganus Frian Osra, Pedagoose's close friend, the man that rose to prominence during a time of war. Research showed that he was once a scumbag, one who was sociable and with a number of close companions. He'd venture out in a town every day, guzzle booze, and pick fights with adventurers and mercenaries. However, like any human, he surely had his days where he was in good spirits. Enough to rag on the royals and nobles to any adventurer or mercenary that would listen. They would no doubt humor him while smiling awkwardly, occasionally pitching in where he needed help. Likewise, he would listen to their requests as well. This is that extra context that, yes, technically does tie into my predictions here. The idea that he was out there and he met these people. It so focuses on the nastiness of him, but it's like, but you would imagine that eventually he's going to know these people. This isn't a thing that he's always going to be out there and constantly drinking, constantly fighting. He's going to meet these people. He's going to meet friends. In times of war, adventurers, mercenaries, and low-ranked soldiers were considered expendable pawns. Ganus met them at their level and listened to their final wishes. Or at least, that's what Rudius gathered. Then he became king, not because he wanted to, but because he had no other choice. There must have been nobles and knights that weren't pleased, but not adventurers or mercenaries. They supported him. That's why Pedagoose and the others left on a journey to take down Laplace, and succeeded. They were compelled to aid someone who honored the last wishes of the nameless soldiers who fought and died. That's big. That is absolutely huge, especially in a time of war. These people are literally being sent out there with no care. Like, these people up in their throne, they're just pointing, and they have to go out there. They're not seeing that death. They're taking the bloodshed in their own hands. Well, now, again, it technically points out that his father died as well. So his father did die at some point, but there's a lot of these nobles and stuff that are chilling up here. They don't have anything to do with it. They're just puppeteering. Gaunus succeeded in fending off the invaders while Petagus and his party were away. Not just through the help of the adventurers and mercenaries alone, but at some point the nobles and the knights must have caved and supported him, so he even got them. This probably wasn't because he inherited the will of the deceased, but because he carried the will of his fallen father and brothers to protect Asura. So it's not that they agreed with him, but he was technically supporting the thing that they would actually care about, I guess. With his connection to Gaunus, it surely would have to be the right answer, but was it really? Rudius thought this was some kind of low-hanging fruit.
Carry out the will of the deceased, you say? In other words, your desire to become king is entirely contingent upon the will of other people. You think someone like that can truly become king?
His tone was condescending and derisive, which probably meant they gave him the wrong answer. Yes, you're entirely right, Lord Petagus. My desire is contingent upon the will of others. I am sure that is a far cry from the rest of the world would consider a true king. But she took a deep breath, face full of determination. If I can be the king those who entrust their wills to me hope for, then I don't mind if I'm not a true king.
Oh?
Petagus scowled, looking none too pleased by her answer.
And you would ask me to aid a king as foolish as you?
Yes, if I'm such a fool, all the more reason I should be hoping for your assistance.
Ha!
Rudius didn't like where this was heading. He's like, this is going downhill fast. Can we have a load quick save? Load the quick save. She gave a thoughtful answer. Instead of obsessing over what made a true king, she would focus on fulfilling the wish of those who died for her. That was the kind of leader she would be. A king of the people, whose policies reflected their wishes. Whether or not that was the correct answer, it was an admirable goal. However, it seemed far from what Petagus hoped for.
Do you really think that answer is enough to compel me to aid you?
No, I do not, my lord. However, these are my true feelings. No lies, no obfuscation. This is the king that I, Ariel Alamoy Asura, wish to become. If you reject what I stand for, then I have no need for your power. That's one of those things where, like, she says that and inside she's like, please take it. I still need you. But there is a side of me that does believe, I mean, there's no way that inside she doesn't think, please accept this. She still wants him. And she doesn't want him to turn her down. But there is another side of it that is, please don't turn me down because this is what I'm going for. I want you, and I don't want you to deny it. But at the same time, this is me, and I hope that you'll accept it kind of thing. Petagus narrowed his eyes.
You think you can attain the throne without my assistance?
If my ideals are so vastly different from yours, then I think your aid will be more than a hindrance than a help. Okay, now you're digging it further. I don't know, maybe there's a side of her inside that's thinking, I need to slap back. I need to show him that I'm not weak. Petagus dropped his hand from his cheek and stood slowly. His features were tight with fury. Mouth stretched in a thin line as his eyes widened. As he raised his hand, Rudius imagined all the spirits lunging at Ariel. But instead,
well spoken, Ariel Anamoy Asura.
His voice boomed.
You have made your convictions clear.
Rudius had concentrated his mana into his staff, intending to defend Ariel if he had to. But Petagus' words gave him pause. Rudius is like, damn it, do I gotta do this?
I, Armored Dragon King Petagus Dora, hereby swear upon the name of my deceased friend Gaunus Free and Asura, that I will aid in your quest.
His voice grew even louder.
I will prepare a teleportation circle for you. Return to the palace as soon as you can. Set everything in place, and call me when you're ready.
Thank you, said Ariel. Well played, Ariel. Well played, Ariel. Got more guts than really most anybody in that room. Well, everybody in that room, honestly. Rudius froze, utterly confused. His words made it clear that he gave the wrong answer, and it displeased him. Or at least that was the impression that he got. But yet, he was going to aid her. Did he see a spark of potential during their conversation? By your leave, Ariel led her group towards the exit, wearing a perfect poker face, while Luke and Sylphie grinned triumphantly. They had the right to feel that way, as Ariel now had Petagus' support. They basically won. They won. That meant Rudius completed his first mission from Orsted. Mission complete. XP. Rudius started to follow them, but then paused and glanced back to the throne. Petagus was surrounded by his followers, arrogantly perched on his chair, staring down at them.
What is it, Rudius Grey Rat?
It's nothing. He was about to turn to leave, but couldn't shake his curiosity. So, in the end, was that the right answer? Is that really what makes it a true king? Patagus sighed.
It was not the answer I desired, no.
Then why did you agree to help her? He grinned.
There was a time in the past when all of us thought Gaunus was the definition of a true king. He was flexible but cautious, generous but sensitive. He embraces inadequacies, knowing all humans had them, and that was that very thing which made him adequate. On top of that, he looked at people as people, capitalized on their strengths, and helped them grow. He, more than any other I knew, was the most qualified to lead the humans and their war-ravaged world.
Patagus seemed to remember Gaunus fondly, despite what Rudius had read. He had seen Gaunus for himself. Surely his account was more believable than a dusty old tome. Still, it could be rose-tinted glasses. And apparently it wasn't just using some sort of charm on him. There goes that theory. Just throw that in a trash can.
Ariel Adamoy Astra does not bear the faintest resemblance to Gaunus. However, observing how she conducted herself, I suddenly remembered something. Was this not the ideal king that Gaunus had spoken of?
Gaunus spoke of an ideal king?
Yes. He considered himself far from ideal. He was always vocal about what he considered the ideal king. From his younger days hanging around the pubs, to his time in campsites.
Campsites. I can't say campsites in his voice.
To his time in campsites, on the battlefield, and even after becoming king. He said, an ideal king is one other peoples are willing to sacrifice their lives for.
It clicked for Rudius. Ariel had told him that a great king had the determination to carry on the wills of others. A dozen or more already gave their lives for her. They did that despite not knowing if she truly would ascend the throne or not. In fact, they knew their chances of it was slim, and that their sacrifice might never be rewarded. It was all because they thought she was someone worth staking their lives on. So, while she wasn't an ideal king that Patagus had hoped for, she was what Gaunus considered an ideal king. It is kind of interesting that that's the case. It's like, Patagus was shooting for this. And then she kept coming over and saying, you know, is it this? Is it this? And he kept saying, no, it's not it's not this. But eventually, this time, what he's saying here, this time, she said her new thing she found, and in listening to her, which is, it had to be triggered by what she said, because it literally connects. He goes, oh, that's right. He said that. All right, I'll do it. Because you're not what I think you need to be. You're not Gaunus. You're what Gaunus wanted. That's the key thing. You're what Gaunus wanted. And it is sad because yes, this is the idea here that these people were backing her, probably knowing that she'd lose. But that's the incredible thing. It's easier to back somebody because you know they're going to win. Oh, that's the easy bet. And it seems like they're going to be better than the alternative, and they're going to do it. So there's a lot of cases where you'll have selection A, B, and C. A, it looks like they're going to win, but I don't like them. B, a good chance they're going to win, but there's a lot of things I don't like about them. And then you have C. It's very unlikely they're going to win, but damn, they're perfect. To go for C rather than B, that takes something. That takes something that there is something there that you just cannot pass up. You truly believe in it. And it gives a lot of credit for those that lost their lives for Ariel. I have mad respect for the idea that somebody is willing to choose C when B, for them, we're not talking about Ariel. We're not talking about leadership. We're talking about the servants. We're talking about those that swore faith to her, their fealty to her. Those people have mad respect. I see. I understand now. Your ability to assess people is truly impressive. Reese bowed before taking his leave.
Rudius Grey Rat.
Patagus called out to him before standing and heading towards another exit. When I read this, I thought like he's gonna take him to a side room where there's gonna be something special in there. Come over here, boy. I'm gonna give you something. No, he's literally just doing like this. I'm gonna throw one jab at you before I walk out the door because I have to get one win out here.
I have a question of my own.
Yes, what is it?
Why did you not mention Orsted this whole time? I hate that man, but his presence is not one I can ignore. Didn't you consider things might go more smoothly if you brought him up?
Orsted had already told him that Patagus refused him. Knowing that, he couldn't see how bringing him up would improve the outcome. Rudius wondered if this was a test, or a clever retort. Neither Orsted or I are seeking kingship.
But Orsted does wish to see Ariel become king, yes? And you haven't aligned yourself with him, if I'm not mistaken. In which case, shouldn't you have capitalized on his influence to further your aims?
Even if that sped things along, Princess Ariel would still be the one taking the throne, and she needs your help to do it. No matter how much help we provide, we are still outsiders. Unnecessarily using Orsted's name to force compliance will only breed enmity. Rudy's thought that was a pretty badass answer. I was wondering, like, I'm reading this and I'm going, where is he pulling this out of? Because he sounds too cool right now. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I was badass. As far as he was concerned, those getting involved here needed to chip in on their own volition. Once Ariel was king, she would have to run it on her own. Rhys didn't know Orsted's plans here, but for himself, he had no demands to make of Ariel once it was over. With no stakes in it, he didn't want to get too deeply involved. Yeah, this goes back to that whole thing where, like, he acknowledges that once this all goes down, he's going to make enemies. Like, doing this, he's going to make enemies. And, yeah, there's an argument to be made that the least you get involved, probably the better. Like, I don't want to stick around. Once it's done, get out of there. Like, what she does, she does.
That's a weak way of thinking.
Pettigoose spat before leaving the room. Rhys... you... Rhys was left with the 12 servants, barely able to breathe under all the weight of all their gazes. He hurried to the door, unable to bear it. That was embarrassing. Half-hearted answers seemed to be a no-go with him. He's like, that was badass. He's like,
idiot. You're a wussy.
Leaving the... I mean, it seems like this is a very obvious conversation here, and the idea of... There's a side of me that believes that Pettigoose seen that it was kind of noble of Rudius not to rely on Orsted. Like maybe he gets a little bit of a respect for Rudius, but I don't think he's going to admit that. Pettigoose, I think, is a type that he's not going to say somebody's a good person. I mean, he was pretty chippery when Rudius helped him take down a long-time enemy, but the idea of him being that kind of positive to Rudius seems to be kind of something that we'd hold back. But there's a side of me that kind of wonders what this conversation is, and him kind of possibly seeing something in Rudius, but then being disappointed that he wouldn't use that. Or it could be a jealousy thing, that Rudius has that strong a connection to to Orsted that he doesn't have. But again, he says he hates Orsted. But again, that could be the curse. I am kind of curious if Pettigoose is affected. I don't know if they've ever mentioned if the idea of Pettigoose being affected by it. I would assume so. But there's probably a good chance that he's not. And it's just that he fears Orsted because he knows how powerful Orsted is. But anyways, leaving the audience chamber, Rudius headed to Ariel's room. Busting through the door without a knock, sorry for lagging behind, first thing he's seen was a pair of porcelain white shoulders. Sylphie had already peeled off Ariel's fancy clothes and was in the midst of loosening her corset. Sylphie barked, "Ah, Rudy, how dare you? No need to fuss. Lord Rudius served our cause well. There is no need for him to seek permission to enter my quarters. If he considers a peek at my body sufficient reward for his services, then it's a small price to pay." She's like, all right, transaction done. Oh, Ariel. Sylphie gaped. What? But Princess Ariel. Ah, I see. I wasn't being considerate enough. Lord Rudius, my apologies, but I would appreciate if you would step out. He was already out the door by the time she said that and closed the door behind him. He didn't know where she got that false impression from, but he wasn't shamelessly walking in for a peek. Though, she did have a nice body. Ariel's figure was something that she was naturally born with, and didn't have to struggle to achieve. He had to make sure to knock. He led him in the past to seeing a pervert embracing his statue. Poor Zenova. That should have been enough of a lesson for him, but he apparently was a slow learner. By the way, he thought, Luke was in there, right? So he was allowed to look? Not surprising. Ariel probably felt comfortable with him. All right, Rudy, you can come in now, Sylphie said, peeking from the door. When he tried to step in, she pushed her lip out in a pout. Did you see her? You know, I noticed that she wears white underwear. Her cheek swelled in a scowl. Knowing that she had white pantsu on as well, he poked her cheek and stepped in. Oh, dear Miss Sylphie. What is it, Master Rudius? Let's save all our fawning for when we get home, shall we? Sylphie smacked his butt before marching off to the corner of the room, forcefully plopping down in a chair with glowing red cheeks, which made her more adorable. Ariel sat in a chair, looking princess-like, even in her casual wear. Her clothes were expensive, but it may be because a real princess wore them. Apologies for walking in on you. No, not at all. So, what'd you think? Think about what? It's a trap. It's a trap. Rudius, run, it's a trap. My body. Does she have to ask that? She knew Sylphie was going to be furious at him later. No, it was probably a test. Everyone was testing him today. He had to pick the right answer. It was amazing. Or, so I'd like to say, but personally, I prefer Sylphie instead. Is that truly how you feel? Then I must apologize for showing you something so unsightly. Ariel snickered. I can't believe you'd say that. While Luke shrugged, everyone was in good spirits due to the success of the day. Please, have a seat. After sitting, Ariel's face turned solemn. Thanks to your efforts, Lord Rudius, we can now move on to the next phase of our plan. No, I haven't done anything. No need to be humble. I only managed to find the answer because you took us to the library. She found the answer on her own. She also swayed Petagus with her response. He could take some credit because Derek wasn't there to convince Petagus on her behalf, and in his future self timeline, Ariel failed. So there wasn't any harm in him patting himself on the back. Still, Orsted was responsible for more than half of the plan. He's a vehicle, but yeah, it's pretty much mostly Orsted. Like Rudius drove, like he was in the driver's seat, but Orsted was fueling it, I guess. Now then, let's speak of what comes next. Lord Petagus advised us to return to the palace as soon as possible and set things up. I plan to heed his words and do just that. Why do you mean by set up? Why do you mean by set up? What do you mean by set things up? God, are we already doing this? I didn't even mark this one, so I must have just totally glanced over it. Why do you mean by set things up? I think it's supposed to be what do you mean? I don't know. Whatever. Damn it, Seven Seas. Exactly what the words imply. Yeah, he didn't know what that implied. But he should think for himself before asking for an explanation. To sum it up, Petagus wasn't going to join them on the march to Ospher Kingdom. He wanted Ariel to go in ahead and stage for his entrance. A stage could be a party of nobles, where they could hail the entrance with the spirits ringing fancy songs. The nobles would gape in surprise and gasp his name, prostrating themselves. So there's no real need to rush, is there? Should we not spend more time preparing? We cannot afford to. I have received word that my father has grown deathly ill. Despite delivering shocking news, Ariel's expression revealed no emotion. Yeah, there's two routes that one can go. Is the first and the idea of the obvious one, I think, is that she doesn't like her father. I think any person that is in a situation that Ariel's in is not gonna like her father, because what did her father? I don't think I never really noted that, but every time the king is brought up, I've never really acknowledged that the king is over here, literally running this kingdom, and she got chased out. So what is the king doing? He just doesn't care, obviously. I don't know if they'll get more into that later on, but it's pretty much indicating this idea there's no relationship there, which is typical. There's a lot of setups of kings and the princes and princesses that they just don't have any care. They just make the children and they're raised elsewhere. It's like Zenoba. Father doesn't care about him. He was a tool. There's very little interactions between a king and their children in a lot of these cases. So yeah, it's most likely the idea that she has no care for her father. But on the other hand, it could be that she's just keeping a poker face on. So Ariel already knew. Did she get that through normal channels, or did the man god divulge that from Luke? Reese suspected that it was Luke, the man god. He's like, yeah, probably the man god told her. I'm surprised that he didn't ask her. That was a kind of surprise. I was expecting that to come up here in a minute. But wait, Ariel could have gotten that news directly from the man god. Here's going back to that whole thing, which would mean that she is his apostle. If so, that would throw a big wrench in their plans. Judging by the look on your face, I take it you already knew that. Huh? Since you're a servant of the dragon god, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you didn't bat an eye. Well, Master Luke's request was so sudden, and you seem to be pretty driven to move ahead with your plans. I suspected something was up. She seemed satisfied with the answer, and nodded. I am sure that you must have your own matters to attend to, in which case, 14 or 15 days should be sufficient to wrap up things and prepare for your journey, yes? 22 to 23 days had passed since he first received orders from Orsted. That meant almost a month had passed, so Orsted's info was accurate. Fortunately, if we can enjoin Lord Petagus to prepare some teleportation circles for us, our journey won't take long. We should have some time to work with. Still, knowing my father is ill, I should return as soon as possible, lest it be too late. I would like to arrive before my brothers have a chance to secure their foothold. Based on her words, Rudius assumed his illness was terminal. Well, duh, we already assumed that he died. We've already heard that he's dying. I mean, it could be that somebody's poisoning him and that if she arrives in time, they could stop him from dying. I doubt it. That means they would be crowning a new king. Ariel needed to move in order to compete for the throne. One thing worried Rudius. Orsted mentioned High Minister Darius Silva Ganius. Orsted said that they need to find Tristina to deal with him and remove him from office. It was tempting to think that they no longer needed her, as Petagus was at their side. But Orsted wouldn't have mentioned Darius if he wasn't an obstacle. So yeah, that is technically an idea there of like, we should be good enough, right? This is enough, right? No, that's a part of the equation. And if you don't fill that whole thing out, that could cause disaster. I guess the point is that Orsted doesn't know. He could, technically. He could know everything that technically needed to come to play in order for it to happen and how critical certain things were. But it is a story that kind of played out that he's seeing. He doesn't know if he pulls this out of it, it'll fall apart. He just knows that these things are very important. So yeah, you could make the assumption that, do you really need both of those for it to work out? It'll play out differently, but the end result could still be the same. With Pedagogus at her side, Ariel equaled the first prince and his faction in power and influence. Getting rid of Darius would put her ahead. To have victory assured, Rudius would need to take action again. Princess Ariel, speaking of teleportation circles, wouldn't it be better if we had one placed near the border of the Austria Kingdom than within the nation itself? Yeah, he's like, I need to go over there and talk to her first. Can we go there first? Oh, and why is that? If word got out that someone as prominent as a princess was able to slip in the kingdom without passing through the border, they may begin to suspect that something unsavory is at work, especially since the teleportation circles are forbidden. If you were discovered to have used them, it would spark unnecessary questions. I think it would be better if we made our way from the border to the capital. That way, the people can also glimpse you as you pass by. I see. That's a fair point. Clever. Very clever, Rudius. I mean, he makes a good point here. There's also the other aspect of, like, would anybody care? Are we really going to question that much? Like, oh, it looks like our records don't show that you came through the border, because we would have known if you came through, because they're probably looking at that stuff like crazy. They want to know if she ever enters that kingdom. And if she suddenly appears at the front door, they're going to go, wait, how the hell did she get here? And it seems to imply here in a minute that they all know about this stuff. Like, this is one of those kind of unspoken things about the royalty, it seems, is they all know the teleportation circles are there. They just, nobody, it's a hush-hush thing. It's under the table. Reese thought now all that was left was to figure out the excuse to contact the organization that Triss was in. He didn't know how to go about doing that, but organizations like that were always willing to negotiate with money involved. No questions asked. Very simple organization. As long as you have money, we can talk. Who are you? I don't care. Got money? Let's talk. Luke then spoke up. I oppose that idea. If His Majesty is truly ill, the first and second prince may have minions along the road to obstruct our return. Teleportation circles may be forbidden, but long as the ones we are using aren't discovered. That's another one. Is that another one? But long as the. I'm not even gonna look it up. I'm not gonna. I literally. From what I remember, there's like 3 like damn it 7 season moments in this like volume or these chapters, and I'm not going to keep opening it up. But long as the ones we use aren't discovered. But as long as the ones that we are using aren't discovered, I think that's a better way of putting it. We can come up with excuses for they butchered Luke's words. We can come up with excuses for how we got to the capital unnoticed. Oh dear goodness. That's a reasonable argument, Ariel acknowledged. Continue. This time, we have Rudius accompanying us. There should be no concerns when it comes to our strength in battle. Yet rumors say that the first prince has enlisted the services of the North Emperor. While the palace may hold its own dangers, I think we would be in even bigger jeopardy if we were caught in the open road by an experienced swordsman of the North God style. He knows way too much. He knows way too much. Now, I think the employment of the swordsmen and all that kind of stuff, I think that would probably be very well known at this point. I don't see this stuff being hush-hush. I mean, even Rudius, the future Rudius, when he was going there, I think he learned about that as he was going back there. Or at least I think he got word of it when they died or something like that. I forget. But I would see this stuff being a lot more well known. I mean, they're going to be there. They're going to be, training the soldiers or whatever. They're going to get word out there. But still, it does make you question. Reese could hear fear filter through his voice. Yeah, he's like, I don't want to fight them. I don't want to fight them, please. True, we don't want to be targeted by that sort of opponent. It seemed that Ariel and Sylphie preferred Luke's proposal. The 3 of them had fled the kingdom, fought tooth and nail, losing many. It was only natural that they feared attack on the road. Reese wondered if he should make an excuse to go on ahead and make contact with Triss, but it would defeat the purpose if anything happened to them in the meantime. He hadn't satisfied his suspicion that Luke was an apostle of the man god. His suggestion might be on the behest of the man god. You both make sound arguments. Sylphie, what do you think? Personally, I think we should teleport directly to the kingdom. We have no idea exactly where in Astra this circle will take us. Plus, there could be no greater advantage than outwitting the first prince by not passing through the border checkpoint. So, Sylphie was backing Luke's idea. He's like, she turned on me. Also, we managed to slip out of the country without causing much of a stir. I see no reason why we shouldn't secretly sneak our way back in. It would take a month to travel on foot from the border. Such time could be spent on other things. This is a very good point. Because when they got to the border, I think they sort of made it out like, oh, well, you're this person. Oh, yeah, that's me. And kind of just walked out the door. These people were helping Ariel get out of there. They were told if Ariel Anemoy Asura shows up, send her to this town. And then instead they said, oh, you're not her. Take care. Like, I think they even gave her a different name or something like that. But anyways, they let her through. They all wanted her to go through. So it's a pretty good chance there that at the time, nobody knew. I think they know now where she's at, obviously. But at the time, nobody knew that she even left. I mean, even that guy that was doing the investigation for Paimon, he literally thought that she was dead. They all thought that she was dead. And then suddenly she pops back up. So yeah, there's an argument to be made that she never had this fanfare leaving. She could easily come back in. It does make me kind of wonder just how much the average citizens knows about Ariel. Obviously, there's the whispers that were going on, but was there ever an announcement for what happened to her? That's the question mark. Because again, I think all the royalty, they know where she's at. Very well. I understand your point of view. In that case, we will proceed as planned and teleport inside Asura Kingdom. Ariel had made up her mind. It was partly his own fault for not sharing more information with Sylphie ahead of time. He could work separately from the main group and contact Triss, or get someone else to do it instead. Ghislaine wasn't cut out for that. Ellen Lace was pregnant, and because of that, Cliff was not an option. Zenoba wouldn't be fit either, but maybe if he had Ginger at his side. Nah, ordering around another country's prince might cause issues. Suddenly a knock came at the door. It was Servarl. Just a moment ago, we discovered the teleportation circles inside the Asura Kingdom have been destroyed. Huh? What do you mean? Allow me to explain. Pegasus had commanded Servarl to activate one of the magic circles in the Asura Kingdom. After it didn't respond, she sent Armafi to investigate the other end. It had been destroyed. They know what was coming up. The man god knows what's coming up. This is finally, well, yeah, I think I can go with this. I think this is finally a sign that the man god truly does give a crap about what's going on. Because like I've been saying, I've been keeping my mindset in the idea that I don't necessarily think the man god cared about what was going on in Asura. I think this is the first sign to me that he truly does. I was going in this mindset that I was wondering if possibility that, yes, technically, why Orsted came to that conclusion is because the future diary had something in it happen that wasn't according to his knowledge of the future that would be. And he made the assumption that has to mean that he was keeping Ariel from being king. So I got to make him king. Like, I need to correct this future so that it matches better with what I've seen. Because if it doesn't match with what I've seen, I won't get to that ultimate goal. And obviously, I think they've indicated several times, but he won't tell Rudius that there is something way down the road that Ariel has to be there for. Or at least she has to be in that place for something else to happen that he needs. So this is the first point where I'm like, yeah, those teleportation circles being broken. Okay. he had some stuff destroyed. Checking the other circles in Asura Kingdom, they found the same. The closest teleportation circle was now near the nation's border. They would have to walk from there. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the circles. There was no way it could be coincidence. Was it the man god or Orsted? Yeah, that was the other question mark. It was like, like Orsted's like listening in or knows what's gonna happen. And he's like, ah, damn it, I had to destroy all this damn thing. I'm gonna teleport in there. I need to go see Trish.
That Pegasus likes to use those things, so I get rid of those things really quickly.
Riz could ask Orsted later to know for sure. Still, since he suggested using the circles, it could throw a suspicion on himself. Luke eyed him warily, as he knew something about this and wasn't sharing. Sylphie also gave a nervous look. They probably both thought it was Orsted doing. Ariel, on the other hand, wasn't shaken. In that case, I suppose we have no other option. We will follow Lord Rudius' suggestion. Princess! Luke was gaping in shock. Luke, inform Elmoy and Cleone of the situation, and please help them with preparations. Sylphie, come with me. We need to pay respects to the ladies and gentlemen of the Renoa Kingdom. I will leave you to your own devices, Lord Rudius. Be sure to say farewell to your family and friends for the time being. As you command, Luke said quietly, nodding. Despite the unease lingering in the air, they parted ways. I think Ariel right here is suspicious just like the other two of them. because I think, yes, that's an obvious thing. They all know that Rudius is working with Orsted, especially Sylphie does not trust Orsted and would see him sabotaging something here. And again, she's kind of expressed before that she doesn't think that Orsted's working in Ariel's favor. But still, I think with Ariel here, she's like, Rudius suggested doing this, and it was a good point. She agreed with Rudius. She went with what the other two said. She was letting all three of them be a part of the decision making. And then she went with the greater number. These two are advising it. This one's advising this. Go with the greater amount. She was still okay with what Rudius said. It just meant that she had to prepare things quicker. So instead of sitting here and crying about it, I love this. Instead of sitting here crying about this, wanting to know answers, what the hell happened? Rudius, are you involved? She said, okay, let's go. We have less time. Go. Like, she doesn't care. Let's just get going. It's kind of a good thing. Getting a lot of mad respect for her in this chapter. So, but that gets us into chapter 9. The longest chapter in the history of Mushoku Tensei. The longest damn chapter. How much was it? I forget what it was. Like 60 pages or something like that. But anyways, probably based on the fact that I'm already like an hour and 10 minutes recording for that chapter, I don't think I'm going to do an extra chapter, but we'll see. Chapter 9, before traveling to Asura Kingdom. Rudius met with Orsted and informed him everything that had happened. Orsted had a sinister grin, but maybe that was just a smile.
I see. You did well then. But I will advise you to never return to the library labyrinth again. That Demon King holds grudges.
Ugh. Okay, I understand. He was sadly reprimanded for his failures. Orsted even scowled at him as he said it. But Rudius thought that he may just be exasperated with him. His expression seemed to say,
how in the world could you end up causing so much trouble in a library? Of all places.
But it wasn't his fault. He had no idea Luke would bawl like a baby over a book. He had the right to cry. It was an emotional moment. I don't suppose there's any way that he would accept an apology.
That would be futile. Demon Kings don't operate on common sense.
From his scant interactions with Demon Kings, he thought he'd hear him out. But Orsted didn't seem to think so. Yeah, I agree with a lot of people. I thought it would be very clever if he just wrote in his diary, hey dude, sorry about that. One of my friends got a little bit emotional and he cried on it, and look, I'm really sorry. Can I make it up to you? There's something I can do. But he does technically make a good point in the idea of the best way that I can apologize is to keep writing. Because he likes what he's writing. Okay. But there is a side of me that says you should write there saying, hey man, yeah, Luke did it. Sorry about that. I really apologize. I hope I can make it up to you. I will keep up my diary and I'm going to do better. And I would think that Demon King would be like, yeah, come back anytime you want because you're writing me a cool book. I don't think the Demon King would want him dead because then he doesn't get to read more of that book. But yeah, I can understand the idea of him not wanting him to destroy other books. Technically, he did destroy a lot more other books too, so that's the other problem. And a lot of that was directly from Rudius. They did make a mess, but they had no other choice. He wanted to apologize, but he'd given up on going back, as Orsted advised. Perhaps never showing his face was the best apology he could give. Actually, and I think that's actually a very a bad mindset, and I think that's totally from the old Rudius. I think that's totally a shut-in type mentality is, well, it's better that I just don't go there because they just don't want to see me. That assumption that they don't want you around anyways, so it's better for them. I mean, I'm not doing it for myself. I'm not doing it because I don't want to go. I'm doing it for them. That makes you feel better. Actually, the best thing he could do for the Demon King was write in his diary. Daily updates would be impossible, but he could try as much as possible. What do you think about this teleportation circle business? The group had suspected his involvement for a moment, before coming to their senses immediately after. It still put seeds of doubt into their heads to think that he was hiding something.
The man God's work, I am sure. Seems like his first attempt to thwart us failed.
Orsted nodded in confidence. He was in unusually good spirits, mumbling something like,
just one more person.
How do you mumble in good spirits with that voice?
You... Just one more person.
I don't know, sorry.
Just one more person.
Not sure what that meant. Rudius would be grateful for any enlightenment. He's probably talking about Darius. Oh, unless he's talking about more support because he got the support of Petagus, and so it's one more person in Triss. But yeah, I would think that it was taking down him. Yeah, anyways. If you don't mind, could you fill me in on what you mean by the man god failing?
Indeed.
Pedagus adjusted his posture and glared, eyes molten. He may shoot laser beams.
Pedagus confirmed these teleportations were unusable, yes.
Correct, bossman, sir.
Bossman, sir? There's not many circles within the Asura's borders. Most of them were placed by the royals and the nobles to escape if they ever found themselves backed in a corner. Among them, several are already non-functional, and those are the ones that Pedagus had made use of. Thus, you have your answer.
Wait, that wasn't an answer at all. Yes, it is. It is definitely an answer. It's Darius, or the prince, yes, like he says. What do you mean by that? Reese fell to his knees, bowing his head. He's like, please, enlighten me. I am stupid, please. That's so weird.
Simply put, these teleportation circles are in places where your average citizen cannot happen upon them. Many are protected by soldiers. Someone who can go in and destroy them must be someone of respectable authority, either a noble or a high-ranking aristocrat.
Okay, I get where you're going with this, and?
Use your head a little. Do I need to make the chart for you? I'll connect the pins with each other.
Yes, sir. Rias thought it over. Since some of these circles were non-functioning circles Pedagus used, the possibility was high the man god orchestrated it. So it was an apostle that was a royal, or in high position, to manipulate the royal family. First Prince Grabble? Or High Minister Darius? One of them is the man god's apostle.
Indeed. The spread of those circles across the kingdom implicates the involvements of High Minister Darius, since his private soldiers are scattered throughout the nation.
Rias didn't know about the soldiers, so it made sense. So we can be reasonably sure High Minister Darius is the man god's apostle then.
Yes, there is a possibility it might be the first prince, but that changes nothing. We'll have to kill them both regardless.
Just take them all out. I mean, that is the option, is just to kill them all, but then it technically causes the issue with you kind of need to create a foundation for bringing her in there to become the king. You can't just say, wipe out the palace, and then she stands in the middle of the rubble and says, I guess I'm your new king now, and everybody goes, all right, cool. It just would never work, because then again, you have all the people of the kingdom and all these nobles in the other areas, not the palace, that are going to be against it. You have to build a foundation before you build a building on it. The prince was Ariel's enemy, but did that justify them murdering him? It didn't matter, though. If Orsted said it needed to be doing, he'd have to do it. At least now you're being pretty, like, well, I guess I have to do it about it. Like, you're not making some moral argument about it.
That means there's just one apostle left unaccounted for.
Just one? That means you're certain Luke is an apostle now?
There can be no doubt.
What about Ariel? Is she a possibility?
No.
Vague answer again. What do you base it on?
There are certain people the man god cannot manipulate.
So he's coming to that same conclusion that I was coming to. The idea that because she's not affected by Orsted, not affected by the man god, that their curse and the charm or whatever is kind of similar. Okay, so how can you tell that she's one of them?
Intuition, based on many years of experience.
Yeah, I think that he can tell. Again, I think right here it was connecting that it has to do with his curse. She's not reacting. He has a prime example right in front of him too, Rudius. I think he knows that he wasn't affected by the man god. But I think in like at a distance, he's always probably observing people, and the fact that somebody not responding to him, panicking, he like probably seen her and said, okay, she's not reacting, possibly not affected by the man god. Intuition, huh? His pause indicated that he was certain Ariel wasn't an apostle, but couldn't give his reasoning. Reese decided not to pry since there was more important questions on his mind. What happened if your intuition turns out to be the wrong and she's an apostle?
If that should happen, I will take responsibility and dispose of her myself.
Dispose of her, as in kill? That seemed harsh, especially with how close they've gotten over the past few weeks, including the incident where he walked in on her changing. I mean, we've gotten that close that we're seeing each other naked now. But if Orsted was willing to stake that much on her, not working for the man god, Ruiz could probably trust him. He's like, I'm hoping you're right then, because I don't want that to happen. Reese wondered if he should share the information about him to Ariel. His curse didn't have much effect on her, and wasn't one of the man god's apostles. It might be better to disclose everything to her. That way she could work with them and keep an eye on Luke. Nah, like Sylphie, she trusted him implicitly. She would never believe that he worked for her destruction. Luke was only doing what he thought was best for her. It would be like kicking a hornet's nest. Luke wasn't Ariel's enemy, and being manipulated by the man god hadn't changed his allegiance. That's the important thing here, and that's what kind of boggles my... It's almost like Rudius has like some... It's not like a circular logic here, but it's kind of like one of those logics where it's like he's he's negating his own argument. It's like, I should probably tell her about Orsted and all this stuff in the background that she's not seeing that I'm trying to work around. But wait, she would never believe it because Luke. She trusts Luke. But Luke's not her enemy. So tell her. Like, it's easy just... I mean, he's done the same exact thing with Sylvie. I think him and Rudius and Sylvie sort of came to that conclusion. Yes, she was struggling with believing it because of the whole Orsted aspect being applied to it, but she still did not believe Luke would do that. And she also believed that Luke would be doing everything in her favor. It was unfortunate that Rudius didn't, like, pretty much tell her, yeah, it's probably going to be an aspect that Luke is doing it thinking it's going to help her. That's the problem. And that's something that he can express to Ariel. Ariel, this is what's going on. We need to find this Triss person. She's very important for you taking down Darius. Why do I know that? Orsted told me. Moving on. Okay, Luke might be working with somebody trying to get you killed. I know, you trust him. I get it. He's a good guy. He is devoted to you. But there's somebody that's very, very malicious with him. You know why I fought Orsted? Crazy, right? I would never think of fighting Orsted. But I did. Know why? The same guy that's manipulating Luke. He fooled me. He's gonna fool Luke. Just letting you know. Don't bring it up. Just be wary. Let me know if he says anything crazy. Always let me know. You don't have to manipulate him. You don't have to tell him. It'd be best not to. Just keep an eye on him. That's all. Just be careful. It's that simple. Acknowledge that Luke is not her enemy, but also acknowledge that a trickster is going to tell him something that's going to be beneficial to her, not knowing it will lead to her death. Simple. And I think it's probably going to eventually get there. I'm kind of convinced at this point that eventually Rudius is going to tell her straight up. Like, or maybe at some point, Orsted's just going to walk up to her. Like, all right, let's get this out of the way. Let's talk. I know you're not affected by me. We need to talk. And she'd get to do her showers. A win-win. She get to relieve herself in front of somebody. Anyway, sorry. Luke wasn't Ariel's enemy, and being manipulated by the man god didn't change his alliance. He was only doing things that sounded like a good idea to him, despite the fact they were anything but. I am actually technically at this point, by the way. I'm at a point now where I am starting to believe that there's too much emphasis on Luke being an apostle, and he's not going to be. Orsted considered him a mere spy, reporting to the man god. He wouldn't do anything directly to harm Ariel. Still, he may do something on the man god's advice that would seem right, but lead her to her doom. That's what made him truly dangerous. Exactly. It made sense that Orsted desired to kill him. Sir Orsted.
What?
There's something I would like to clear up with you, just to be on the safe side, regarding how I should approach our battle with the man god. Do you mind if I pick your brain?
All right.
Rudius outlined the war with the man god. First, the man god could see the future. His view of it was expanse and precise. He also had the ability to manipulate people and change the course of that future. However, he couldn't see the events relating to Orsted. The Dragon God's secret arts were stronger than the Man God's prescient vision. Whenever Orsted got involved, the Man God would see false reflections of the future. Thus, he knew Orsted was involved whenever he sensed something slightly amiss, or the future experienced a dramatic shift. But he couldn't see exactly how Orsted brought about all those changes. All he could do was guess. Yeah, it's kind of, that makes sense in the idea, like he's seeing this flow, and then over here, and then like suddenly there's a cloud right here, and then over here it's like, oh, what? Like he doesn't know how it changed, but we went way off course. Like I was ready for it to hit this goal right here, cloud off course. So he's kind of saying that he has to kind of guess it, and that makes sense to what we've kind of established already. He keeps kind of implying the idea that whenever he's around Orsted, he can't see anything. Like when he was talking to him and he gave him the option to work under him, he's like, don't worry, he can't see you right now. Make your choice. So I kind of like the idea right here. It's sort of trying to lay out that power. I mean, again, we've kind of gotten hints about how it works, but here it's sort of kind of solidifying just how it works in practice. If he couldn't work out Orsted's objectives or what he'd planned, the man god couldn't respond accordingly and influence the future in a way that benefited him. So he's technically always working to catch up. This secret art was made for a reason. Like they made this secret art for a reason, because it keeps the man god from being seen, especially in his future view. He can't see what's actually going to happen. And I kind of wonder if that's how he set up Rudius to run into Orsted, is that he just seen this fog there. Okay, this is just a choke point. If I send Rudius this direction, he definitely gonna, if that's Orsted, he definitely gonna run into Orsted. He's always kind of working to, and that makes sense to what Orsted said to Rudius. Don't worry, get this sacred beast, some of this creature. It's gonna protect his guardian, and you're good. Because it's always gonna be this thing that he's gonna constantly have to offset. He's constantly keeping up. Again, it's this idea of keeping the man god correcting the path constantly. He can't get ahead because he's constantly trying to turn the steering wheel back onto the road. Orsted's curse meant none of the man god's apostles were able to get close enough to spy on him, meaning his movements had gone undetected. At the same time, that curse limited the scope of what he could accomplish. Reese joining him is giving him more options at his disposal, giving him an invisible pawn on the chessboard. However, if Rudius took concrete action, the man god could suss out what Orsted was planning. That's why he had to keep his movements discreet and not show his hand to Luke, his eyes and ears. That kind of plays into the idea of not working or telling Ariel all this stuff because, yes, like he says, she's gonna tell Luke at some point. She's gonna tell Luke something. Reese also kept information from Sylphie and Ariel, since he knew how much they trusted Luke. They could divulge that information to him. Reese planned to keep Orsted's aims and actions as secret as possible. He'd look suspicious, but it would lead them to victory for sure. He would keep their intentions under wrapped while defeating the man god's apostles towards their goal, serving Orsted for the rest of his life, allowing him to come out on top 100 years from now, setting for the future so that you can achieve my goal, basically. And that's my interpretation of the situation. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Everything that he had done up until now was technically correct. Pettigoose had called him weak, but they were on the path to their goal. For now, they knew Luke and Darius were likely working for the man god. That left one other. And we're going to get into my theory here in a minute, what they're kind of flagging. They're kind of flagging something. I wonder who this last person is.
I don't know, but judging from the man god's past patterns, it is likely to be someone extremely skilled, either martial arts or magic.
I don't like this. Someone skilled in martial arts or magic. Thankfully, it wasn't his family members. But the future diaries did mention North Emperor and Water God in Ostra Kingdom. Ariel also mentioned the first prince employing a North Emperor. Could it be the North Emperor or the Water God?
Aber and Rada. Yes, there's a good chance. When you leave for the Ostra Kingdom, be wary.
You won't be coming along?
I will be tailing behind you, of course, but we will not be operating together.
All right. In that case, Luke, Darius, Aber, Rada are the ones that we should look out for.
Indeed. You may kill Darius, Aber, or Rada if you like. As for Luke, keep an eye on the situation and use your judgment. If necessary, dispose of him.
You want me to decide whether to kill him or not?
Yes, I leave it in your discretion.
Reese wondered if Orsted thought that he was capable of making those kind of decisions, though it made sense, as he came to claim his life before.
Well, you didn't find when you came after me, you idiot.
No, they're Rada, oddly enough, Rada, for some reason, I have no reason for this, but Rada fits in my brain for some reason as being a possible. I have something else, which it feels like they're flagging coming up that is more in line with it. Just get it out there. With how much emphasis Reese was giving before on the idea of not wanting Zenoba or Cliff possibly to be affected by it, I could totally see it being... I don't think Zenoba. I think it's going to be Cliff. And I hate that. I really do. But I'm kind of wondering right now if it's going to end up being Cliff. I really do think it's going to be pretty clear here soon if we possibly get a sight into Cliff working to make the cure for the curse. But there's a side of me that kind of wonders if it could be possibly Cliff, because that would kind of play into Cliff being of the church. He might see the man god being as some sort of deity that he would have to follow their commandments. So I don't know. It seemed like with the conversation with Zenoba and Rudius and Cliff here in a minute, it just felt like it was flagging it. It just felt like this whole like, we're friends and bros and we're all together and we're working together. And then like out of nowhere, it's like, yeah, we're talking about this at the same time. Are you flagging this? But yeah, I can totally see it being possibly Rada. And again, I have no basis for that. It feels like that would be a fit, unfortunately. This old, very wise lady, super powerful, or possibly Rada's disciple. I guess that could be as well. I'm surprised they didn't bring her up. But I mean, it makes sense because Rada and Abba are the two that have been noted. I think only really Edis knows about Isolde. I think Edis is the only one that knows about Isolde, at least from this camp. I mean, technically, yeah, Orsted should know about her. I mean, he's going to see that she's there as well, but maybe not know that she's important. Now I'm starting to think it's Isolde because they're not mentioning Isolde. now it's suddenly becoming it's got to be Isolde because she's the only one not named in this whole group. But again, there's no reason for them to be naming her. Well, what should we do until it's time to depart?
Make preparations.
What should I prepare exactly?
First, get your equipment ready. You will likely be facing the man god's apostle in a battle while you're in Asura. With your strength, I am sure you will have no trouble, but it would be wise to bring some form of protection.
Orsted looked out of the cottage to the magic armor Zenobia was repairing.
That thing doesn't measure up to the armor of the fighting god, but it's still a spectacular piece of work. I'm sure you must have labored hard to create it.
Well, yes, but we did get quite a bit of advice from the man god on its construction.
Oh, then he dug his own grave. What do you call it?
Call what?
The armor.
Oh, magic armor.
I see. What an uninspired name. What a dull name. Didn't take you long to think of that one, did it, boy? Should I give you a new one for it? Let's see.
No, but thank you. Orsted narrowed his eyes and chuckled. What? That, like, I'm reading through this whole segment, and then suddenly we come to that part, and suddenly out of nowhere, Chuckle just flies up and smack me in the face. I don't think we've ever actually seen Orsted chuckle. His smile was unsettling, but Reese wondered how Zenobia and Cliff would take knowing the Dragon God praised their creation. That's actually a good point.
If you plan to continue using that thing in the future, you should consider improving it. It currently drains all of your mana in a single battle.
But even if we were to make it a smaller, more efficient version, it wouldn't be finished by 2 weeks.
Then we'll have to shovel it for another time.
Reese wondered if he was willing to help, at which point they would have to have a Dragon God Society logo. You have to slap it on there.
Not being able to use a battle aura certainly is inconvenient. For now, I'll see if I can't prepare a few magic items for you to use.
Oh, that would be great, thank you. Pay and the best equipment. The difference between him and the man god's hands-off approach was night and day. Speaking of which, I've been hearing a lot about the fighting god's armor lately. What is it exactly?
Demon Dragon King Laplace's greatest masterpiece, and also his worst failure.
Laplace had made it then.
The armor itself glows golden with magical power and bestows immeasurable strength upon the wearer. However, the mana it contains is so great that it has given the armor a mind of its own.
Very interesting.
It assumes control over the wearer, forcing them to fight until they die. It's a cursed armor.
Cursed armor? The Dragonfolt had a knack of creating all kinds of things. Laplace had made all manner of cursed items, from the spears to this armor. Nothing he created was any good. Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder, because again, the idea of the spears was that it cursed them. It made them go crazy. They literally had to, the spear was broke and they woke up. It's the same exact thing with that armor. So it makes you believe the idea that Laplace, when he created the armor, he literally bestowed a curse probably upon it. And that curse was the exact same as those spears. Very interesting. Now, it's kind of an oddity there, because yes, those spears technically were like there was no competition with those spears. Like, they were just that powerful. So it kind of gives that sense that he's bestowing maybe he could be technically bestowing an aspect. I've never thought about that. He could have been bestowing an aspect upon the spears themselves, and made the same thing with the actual armor. I didn't really think of that too much. I would have to kind of ponder on that one, because there's probably some deeper aspects to that it can technically dig from this conversation.
Having said that, the armor is currently sleeping deep within the middle of the Ringa Sea.
Orsted was a wealth of knowledge, but Reese had to figure out something that he could do. With only 2 weeks to work with, there wasn't much he could do. Still, he had to avoid getting complacent, because of the fact that he was Orsted's subordinate. Orsted was a bit too aloof about matters. Or to be more precise, he seemed to think that he could just try again if he failed. I was totally shocked that he brought this back up, because I jumped on that sucker, and I was kind of wondering if it was like, maybe I'm drawing conclusions here. No, Rudis is jumping back on it again. Maybe he aimed to develop magic to travel into the past after reading the diary. Or maybe he already experienced a time slip like that himself. He did once say, "Try again next time." There it is. Before an awkward face, as if he realized he slipped up. Maybe he'd been through one of these time slips not once or twice or numerous times. While Rudius didn't know why he kept this under wraps, Orsted probably wouldn't answer if he tried to ask. Again, it's getting that whole thing of like, he literally said like, if it doesn't work, we'll do it again. And yes, that could be the idea that I'm going to force this path to reach to the point where I'll kill him. And if I fail, I'll just, again, go back in time. Or it could be an idea of, yes, if I fail that, I'll just have to build another path. And again, it could be having something to do with what the future that he sees. That he establishes a path that will, like, almost like he creates a path that could lead to Orsted's death, and then he has to orchestrate it. Like, okay, it's literally like set destination. It's like a Google Maps. Set destination, man god. And then it plots a course for him, and then he has to build it. And if it fails, got it. All right, let's try it again. Plot course to man god. Plots the path. Try it. Fails. Crap. Kind of interesting. That is actually a very... I might stick to that theory because that does sound kind of interesting because I've always been curious about what this history that Orsted sees. If it isn't, again, is it something that was a future that was given to him way back when he was first sent to the future, or if it's something that he has to cast a spell to create, like a knowledge that he puts into his mind once he sets his destination that he has to work out, which is why he's so stuck on things like Ariel being king. If I want this path to get to its destination, I have to make sure that she's king. And again, if it doesn't work out, I'll plot the course again. Set destination, try it. Problem was that Rudius only had one life to live, or so he'd like to say. It probably wasn't convincing coming from somebody that was reincarnated. But even so, after talking to his future self, watching his last moments, reading his diary, he could sense how full of regrets he was. He couldn't just bank on wiping his slate clean and starting over if he messed up. Rather, he felt that he'd be betraying the person he'd been up until now if he kept up that mentality. Yeah, don't assume that you can just try again. And again, he doesn't want to try again because he likes what he's built this time. He doesn't want to lose it. If it was his previous self, yes, he'd be like, let's try again. He had to put everything he had into this. But how? He could hone his fighting skills, magic skills, but he didn't think he'd get that much stronger. Plus, anything he throw together in 2 weeks would be unreliable and half-baked. It would be best to build on his abilities that he currently had. Aside from that, he decided to apply his skills in mock battles. His sparring partner would be Edis. He'd also asked Zenoba and Cliff to repair his magic armor to be smaller and more fuel efficient. It wouldn't be completed in 2 weeks, but it was something that would serve him in the future. With Orsted's help providing equipment, they could probably finish the project in a couple of years. He also needed to ask Cliff about Orsted's curse. Wait, that reminded him about Zenith. Again, oh, that's right, this thing on the shelf. Zenith, that's right. I need to talk about Zenith. By the way, sir.
What is it?
Reese explains Zenith's condition and a book about removing curses. That blessed child doesn't seem to be amongst the living now, but do you know of any other way that might cure her? Orsted felt silent in contemplation before speaking in a gentler voice than usual. I hate these, like, he's so... Refugian with Rudius right here is so into the expressions on Orsted's face. I don't keep repeating it. Like, this is one of the things that I cut a lot of when I'm going through, especially Orsted segments, is that Rudius likes to constantly make a joke about how, oh my gosh, he's so angry. Wait, that's his face. Oh my gosh, he looks so angry. Oh, that's just his face. Oh, over and over again. So when something like this comes up, it begs a question mark. Like, wait, what's his face? Yeah, it could be my theory that I was going into really early on with Orsted and him working with Orsted and this idea that he's helping Rudius because he's seen how much Rudius fought for his family. And Orsted is like, he's got mad respect for that because he cares for family. He cares about the concept of family. And again, technically seeing himself and Rudius at the time was my prediction. But yeah, there is a side of me that kind of wonders if he's doing this because there is a sentimental aspect of a mother and wanting to help a mother. Or possibly that he may know a future about Zenith. Again, technically the displacement incident was not a part of the future, or at least it shocked Orsted. So obviously the future that he sees does not involve the displacement incident. That was a massive jarring of what Orsted seeing was supposed to happen. That's why he went there and investigated. He's like, what the hell is this? This wasn't supposed to happen. So I don't see him in the future that he sees, or again, the past of them, is that Zenith is in the state. But I don't know, it's just kind of interesting that he finally speaks more. How do I do his voice more gentler?
It is true that you might be able to return her to normalcy if you use the powerless blessed children's ability. However, their skill is no substitute for actual cure. If you try to force her mind back to what it was before, it may backfire, and things might go in the opposite direction.
So it could make things worse. Then again, after all she'd been through, it was a miracle that she was alive. Meddling with her mental state might possibly make it worse. It would probably be wiser to keep an eye on her for now instead. Her condition wasn't a health concern at the moment. But it still hurts for me. It still hurts for me. All right, well, with that out of the way, I will begin preparations to set out to Orsted Kingdom. And they parted ways. Oh, that was probably the juiciest bit of this whole segment. Pretty much the rest of this stuff is just... there is one juicy bit in the Zenova and the Cliff thing, so we'll see. We'll get to that too. The following day, they had a family meeting. Reese informed them that he'd depart to the Orsted Kingdom and be gone for 3 to 4 months to help Ariel. The reaction to it was indifference. Aisha seemed to be more concerned about him leaving enough dirt for her garden. Norn was more concerned about throwing a party for Ariel. He wanted them to be full of tears, enough that he'd hug them and do his best Terminator impression.
I'll be back.
I finally get to use my Terminator voice. I finally get to use my Arnold voice. I've always thought about using Arnold's voice for one of these characters.
Dominic, get down. Get to the chopper.
According to them, it seemed like every time he went through this, he acted like he wouldn't be coming home, just to return like it was no big deal. They also mentioned the fact that Sylphie and Edis would be joining him this time. You're like, you'll be fine. You got Edis and Sylphie with you. He barely escaped death every single time. But maybe his little sisters didn't see it that way. Or they were being considerate, so he didn't have to worry before leaving. Either way, he'd do his best so they could live out their lives peacefully in the meantime. Yeah, I think it is probably an aspect of like, oh, you're good. Like, you always come back alive. It kind of creates that security and the idea that it always works out. But yeah, there's a side of me that kind of believes that, yes, I think they're worried. It's just that they could be possibly not trying to worry him. The bigger problem was that Norn and Aisha were both convinced that he'd bring home another wife. Assuming he may be one of the girls that was serving Ariel. But he had no plans of bringing another wife into the family, even if he didn't trust the head between his legs. Yeah, he's like, they're like, every time you leave, you always come back fine, but you always bring somebody with you. You always bring another wife in. Yes, technically, yes, he brought back Roxy when he went off to Begarit, and yes, he brought home Edis when he went to fight Orsted. Seriously, he doubted anything like that was going to happen this time. He had Sylphie and Edis with him this time. He was alone the previous couple of ventures, which left him emotionally devastated. No, technically that was only strictly a case with Roxy. He was alone and he needed somebody and she provided him that outlet. With Orsted, they all came there. Yes, technically he was alone, and yes, technically Edis saved him when he was at his worst, so I guess they technically both apply. He drifted with the currents because he had no one to hold on to. Lilia assured him that she'd take care of Lucy, but Sylphie was heavy with guilt. But Lilia assured her that she was there for this very reason, as their maid. Lucy had started speaking simple words, such as names, and seeing her work hard made Reese's heart tremble with emotion. She had yet to call him Dada. Instead, she would say Rudy. He hadn't spent much time with her lately, so his name was probably the last one that she'd learn. And now, he and Sylphie would be leaving her behind on a trip. Reese had the feeling the two of them hadn't quite grasped what it means to be parents yet. He had no idea if that day would come. This goes in that whole conversation, and Paul was a prime example of that, where sometimes it isn't until the very end that you realize that you were a good father, or the children would realize that they were a good father, is mostly going to be the case. You're always fighting to create that ideal that you think is what a father wants. In a lot of cases, it's not really some ideal. It is never cut and dry. There is aspects to being a parent that you kind of need to fulfill in order to, that most people would believe is necessary, but it doesn't mean that it has to be done. Roxy was saddened that she'd be alone for 4 months, which Rudius felt awful about. He wanted to return before she gave birth, if possible. But Roxy said that she was fine with him taking his time. She had Lilia and Aisha at her side, so Rudius didn't need to be there. Instead, she wanted him to bring her sweets from the Orsted Kingdom. Dried fruits, slathered in sugar. She's, again, that was another one of those things where, yeah, he says like she wore the usual poker face, but was probably anxious inside. That idea of like her trying to make sure that he feels comfortable about it. Don't worry. And she did the same thing with Orsted. Was like, we're going to handle things here. Don't worry, Rudius. Focus on what you're doing. That was the thing that she was doing there. She understands that he's doing something that he feels that he has to do. And there's nothing, it's not going to fix things by making him feel anxiety about her situation. Focus on yourself so that you don't screw up, basically. And yes, trying to, I think, there is, yeah, obviously she wants some of those sweets. She's got a sweet tooth. But yeah, I think that it is an aspect of like, you know, throw some humor in there just to make sure that he feels that this is what I really want, is you to focus on that. Despite this being her first birth, she didn't let her inner turmoil show. Still, according to Roxy, it was natural for the man of a Midgard tribe to go out hunting, while the women stayed home and protected the house and the children. She puffed her chest out as she explained, ever the reliable wife. He knew everything would turn out fine if he left it in her hands, but he wondered if he could really justify leaving her like this. Yeah, it's like, thank you, but at the same time, it doesn't make it feel right. It still doesn't make it feel right. The only thing that was really disappointing Roxy was her hopes of spending time with Rudius during her long vacation. While it was normal for a renowned wife to quit her job after becoming pregnant, Roxy wanted to continue being a professor. So she talked to Genius about some maternity leave, using Rudius' name to get her way. He had to make sure to use whatever time that he had left before departure to be with Roxy. That night, he overheard Sylphie and Edis's heated voices spilling from the latter's room. After a while, Edis crawled into Rudius' bed and hugged him like a body pillow. After inquiring if they got into a fight, it seemed that Edis would be tagging along with Sylphie to meet with Ghislaine and help with getting things ready. Ariel was making preparations, pulling out of the academy and returning home. Short notice meant packing was a nightmare, and she had to make various calls to people in the regions. This was probably why Edis was asked to be a bodyguard. This all in mind, Sylphie wanted Rudius to spend as much time as he could with Roxy. So that was the reason for their heated exchange. Sylphie trying to be considerate for Roxy, making sure that he had less on his plate and more time to spend with her. It was shocking that Sylphie persuaded Edis without a throwdown. It was a sign that Edis had matured, no longer the same girl that pummeled people indiscriminately. She'd hear out a well-reasoned argument. Is this going to be like an ongoing thing where Rudius is constantly going, oh wow, she's actually mature. Oh wow, she's actually mature now. Oh wow, she actually grew up. I guess it makes sense because of how much time they spent with each other back there and how much that was like solidified in his head. That's how she is. And now he's, again, technically barely spent a month with her and she's different. That said, Edis was told that she had dibs on him for the night in Sylphie's stead. Apparently part of Edis's own conditions. She's like, that's fine, but I get him tonight. Okay, I'll let him have Roxy, but for night, I get him. All right, you can have him tonight. It was still very different from those years of her being self-centered. The berserker princess was dead. Reese thought it would be awful timing if they found out during the trip that Edis got pregnant. Edis disregarded his concerns as a bridge that they can cross when they got to it. She's like, who cares? We'll find out when we get there. She's not very good at parent planning. I hate to say this. I hate so much saying this. I am going to cut it off there. Like I said before, when I actually went and read through, especially chapter 9, I knew this chapter was going to be extremely long. But honestly, I didn't think that I was going to have this much discussion in chapter 8 and the beginning of this chapter. So I really do feel like at this point, this recording is going to be insanely long. As we've always kind of made it very clear, I do not want to push these recordings too long because then it takes extremely long to edit them and get them all put together and get it out there. And unfortunately, right now, I'm extremely busy and stressed out. So I don't want to push it. I like that a lot of you folks are very, very good about being supportive in the idea of me not pushing it, so I'm not going to push it. So I'm going to do a new thing this week. Celebrate, everybody. This is going to be a new thing. I think I'm going to do a half chapter. Yes, I'm going to do a partial chapter 9 and cut it off here. And then next week we'll come back and we'll complete the rest of chapter 9 and then get into extra chapter and all that good stuff. So again, I'm sorry, but again, I don't want to push this too much, so I appreciate you guys dropping by for this Mushoku Monday. I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday, as always. Greatly appreciate you guys' support, despite my wussing out and not doing a full chapter 9 with chapter 8. It's just so much. But again, greatly appreciate you guys' support and all of your kind words. Again, super thanks, memberships, Patreon, all the support. It means so much to me. The like buttons, I like it when you guys hit the like buttons. It means a lot to me. But even if you can't support monetarily, hit that dang like button. That's a great way to support me, telling other people about us and all that kind of stuff. Join the Discord. We have a channel on the Discord, Mushoku Monday there. You can also become a member of our group for Mushoku Monday so that you get the notifications every single week so you don't miss it in case YouTube doesn't like me. I've heard from a lot of people, they're like, I didn't get a notification until like now, and it's like 30 minutes into it. So if you go there and become a member of the Mushoku Monday group, you can get notifications. If you can't get a part of that group because the thing doesn't work, just let me know and I'll manually add you. So anyways, that's a lot to say. Thank you guys so much for your support. And until the next Mushoku Mondays, y'all take care. Rudius informed them that he depart. Rudius informed them that he depart from the following day. They had a family.
If you were to force her mind back to how it once was, that blessed child doesn't seem to be amongst the living now. But do you know any way?
That blessed child doesn't seem to be amongst. That blessed child doesn't seem to be. That blessed not being able to use a.
Not being able to use a battle war certainly is convenient.
We will follow Lord Ordius.
Demon Kings don't operate on common sense.
Teleportation circles may be forgotten. Teleportation circles may be forget. Then he became king.